Hello, everyone. As promised, here is a screencast on charismatic authority. Just to contextualize this a bit, we were talking about Weber and how he's a more multidimensional conception of power than does Marx. So for Marx, everything boils down to class. But for Weber, Weber says class is important, even though he has a different definition of class than does Marx. But he says also status is important. Status can be a form of power, as can party. And then in addition to that, another dimension of power that Marx doesn't look at is authority. And so what Weber concentrates on are three legitimate forms of authority, three justifications for why someone should be able to give orders that others are likely to follow. One dimension of authority was rational legal authority, and again, that is domination or authority via organizational chart or a command structure. Think of an organizational chart when you think of that kind of authority. The second is traditional authority, and this is where you make claims of someone's legitimacy based on age-old rules. So in other words, use the past to justify why someone is in a position of authority. So for example, monarchies rest their legitimacy on the fact that this family has ruled in the past, and therefore this is why their family should rule now and into the future. The last kind of authority that Weber discusses is charismatic authority. And what charismatic authority is it's authority anchored in the extraordinary or seemingly supernatural qualities of a specific person. Someone is deemed as being special, unique, having really unique gifts and talents. Sometimes this person is seen as being God or having supernatural qualities, but this person is extraordinary. And because this person is special or extraordinary, others are willing to follow him or her and are willing to put this person in charge. So this kind of authority produces followers, people who are devoted to this specific other person, as opposed to, say, office holders like you find in rational legal authority systems. And followers are going to carry out the orders of this person or other people that this person delegates authority to, right? But this is all authority that is anchored in another person that is seen as being extraordinary in some way. And some examples of charismatic leaders in the past, we have Gandhi, Obama, Kennedy, Reagan, Mother Teresa, Winston Churchill. All of these individuals were able to lead movements, or in the case of politicians, to get people to vote for them, because they were seen as having a lot of charisma, because people are willing to follow their lead, because they were seen as being extraordinary in some cases. Now, in the case of Mother Teresa, right, I think who is now a saint, right, she's almost treated in divine terms, right? She is seen as being, say, graced by God. But for these other politicians, or for the politicians here, right, even though I don't think most people see these as being divine figures, they were seen as being extraordinary in terms of the vision they had for a country. And from everything that I've heard, say, for both Obama and Reagan, if you were to talk to them individually, they had the ability to make you think you are the most special person in the world. And so even if you disagreed with either their politics, you would talk to them and they could at least convince you that they are a good person, even if you politically disagree with them. So these were leaders who were able to attract followers. Now, it's true in the case of politicians that they were able then to take their charismatic authority and and use that in order to get them into a top position in a rational legal system at the head of a particular government. But what got them into office, at least many people would say, is their charisma. Now, this ability to be perceived as being extraordinary and to gain devoted followers can be used for some good purposes. Right, it can be used in terms of trying to inspire people around a vision of, say, a better America. It's also the case that the same type of authority can be used in some very negative ways. So cult leaders are often very charismatic figures, and based on them and their personality, they're able to get a group of followers. Hitler, by all accounts, was very charismatic in that he would perform in a particular way, and he cared a lot about his performance and how he looked on TV, and based on that performance was able to sway people into think that he is special, right? He has an insight into the world that other people don't have, and then he was able to get a devoted group of followers, and then they were able to take over the German government, and then we know what happened from there. The three folks over here are all cult leaders. This is David Koresh, who was down in Waco, Texas. This is Jim Jones, who's very famous for the Jonestown Massacre, where hundreds of followers, and when their cult was about to be broken up, committed mass suicide. And I cannot remember this guy's name off the top of my head, but he was the leader of the Heaven's Gate cult, and he also impelled his followers to commit suicide because they thought that was a gateway to get back onto a spaceship where they saw themselves as originating from. All right. These figures all had a lot of charisma, and that charisma allowed them to attract followers. And again, they were able to use that following for not so great purposes. But nevertheless, it's the same type of authority that we see with we saw in the previous slide. Some features of charismatic authority. One is that it tends to be non-rational in orientation. Because it's based on a particular person, and this person has a vision of, say, a world, it does tend not to be rationalized in the same way, say, a rational legal authority or system is set up. And often it can be the goals and aspirations as a group could be anchored in some sort of religious vision of the world or a political vision of the world, which may not necessarily be rational in orientation. Often, charismatic authority figures are hostile or ambivalent towards economic concerns because they say their vision is based on something grander or beyond. And so we can think of many leaders of movements, say, who personally, will say he wouldn't hold a traditional job and maybe wouldn't concern themselves too much with money. And maybe Gandhi is a great example here, where Gandhi's possessions were basically the clothes that he would wear, and that was it. And then he lived in such modest conditions, purely so he could devote his time to the liberation of India. And Weber points out that often it's charismatic authority figures who are responsible for big changes in history. And these are often, because they're often revolutionary in nature. So this form of authority lends itself to change or disruption in ways that particularly rational legal authority doesn't, because it's set up to be stable by design and be continuous over time. And also traditional authority, in theory, tries to reproduce itself over time in the same way or use the same process. So both those forms of authority tend to be relatively stable and intend to preserve what is existing and carry it into the future. This form of authority, often the leaders gain the position they do because they have a vision of a different world. So when we see big changes occur in history, often it's through charismatic authority figures. Now, something else that Weber points out is charismatic authority figures, charismatic authority, since it's anchored in one person who is seen as being extraordinary, face a common problem, and that problem is succession, because at some point, this extraordinary person is going to either, say, lose their special abilities as they grow, say, old and enfeebled, or at some point this person's going to die. And the question is, what do you do then? And if everything is anchored in the special person, what happens when that special person goes away? Weber talks about this in that the problem that these movements face is that if they are going to continue over time, so past the time when the original charismatic authority figure lives, then you need to routinize this group in some way if it's going to continue over time. You need to make it routine. And there are two general solutions to this, or two general ways that charismatic authority is routinized over time. And if it's not, it's likely just to die out. One route is to traditionalize it. And generally this occurs when, say, somehow it's set up that the first leader, this charismatic authority figure, sets up a process by which he or she picks his or her successor. And that process of picking his or her successor becomes traditionalized in that same process is used again into the future. So if there's a charismatic authority figure and say he or she picks his or her eldest child, and that's going to be the new leader. Well, when this new leader gets old, or maybe is approaching death, right, or dies, then the question arises, well, who's going to come next? And since between the first leader and the second, it was the eldest child, then you could say, well, in this case, it will be the eldest child here of the second leader. So now we have a new leader and we're using the same process. So you basically just traditionalize the solution. The way power is transferred the first time becomes the model for how it's transferred into the future. The other route you can go is you can rationalize the process. In other words, you can start building a formal organization out of what were originally a band of followers. And so an example of this is we go from Jesus and his disciples, his followers, right? We know, the story of Jesus, right? He is killed on the cross. The question is, what's going to come next? And his followers start building a church. And then one lineage of that church that was being built after Jesus' death is now the Catholic Church, which is a very large and bureaucratic institution that's ruled in many respects in terms of rational legal authority. There's different offices have different rules. There's a hierarchy within those offices, and authority is based on who holds what office at any particular time. So we go from a band of an extraordinary leader and a band of followers to a formal organization. That's how this type of authority can be rationalized. And then when you rationalize it, you allow this organization to continue on into the future, or this particular movement to continue on into the future. For groups that don't do one of these two things, they either don't traditionalize or they don't rationalize, then often once the charismatic authority figure dies or goes away, then the movement or the organization falls apart. the ones that are able to hang around for long periods of time are the ones that either traditionalize their rules of succession or they come up with a rational structure. And to the extent that they rationalize, that rationalization becomes this route for routinizing charismatic authority. Weber sees this as part of that the general increasing amount of rationalization that we witness in the world. So this is another aspect of rationalization that Weber is seeing occurring throughout the world and feeds into his larger concern with the rationalization of aspects of the social world. All right, that is our discussion of charismatic authority. As I will say in the email that I'll send out about this, there is a quiz that will be based on what we covered in this lecture, but then some of the quiz will also refer to those clips that we see from CAST in India, just to make sure we're all operating with the same type of information and just to make sure we're all clear in exactly what that looks like.